Hi, I'm Sarah Cowgill, along with Andrew Moran, James Fight, Dave Patterson, and Graham Noble. And this is the Conservative Five, an online TV production of Liberty Nation News. Don't let them fool you. Democratic socialism is, in fact, socialism, just with a pretty shade of lipstick on. And it's creeping its way back into the minds of Americans. Socialism gained traction in the early 20th century, with the Socialist Party winning elections and Eugene Debs achieving over 900,000 votes in a presidential run from prison. Heck, that doesn't seem that far off anymore, does it? The Great Depression fueled another surge of the ideology as government help was welcomed by those who struggled to have food and shelter. And I'm just going to bring Dave into the spotlight on this. Why does it seem that we are regressing? I mean, are we regressing, or is this just a cyclical thing?
Well, I think that it seems that way because you have so much social media that instantly, promulgates any crazy idea, unlike in times previous when that wasn't the case. But I think the resurgence of democratic socialism, let's call it, it's communism by any other name as they start to explain it. And as it's proposed by the likes of New York City's mayor wannabe, Zoran Mamdani, or Senator Bernie Sanders or Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, take your pick. The one thing all these social radicals have in common is that they have never lived under the system for which they advocate. And, but these radical ideas are not new. The first Red Scare was back, and it occurred in 1919 when post-World War I fears of the Bolshevik-inspired revolution led to what were called Palmer raids. Now, before you think of them as ICE running into your house, they actually did this. There were thousands of radicals, including communists, were arrested or deported. There was no messing around. The Communist Party of the United States was driven underground, and its leaders really faced a lot of persecution, which should have, thwarted their desires, but it did not. And they came under anti-sedition laws, which I thought was a pretty good move, actually. The second Red Scare took place in 1947, and it has the most press. During the period of the early Cold War, when Soviet operatives, attempted to subvert U.S. capitalism, there's no question about that. I mean, and they had these great specious claims of communism being the savior of the working class. But at the same time, the communist movement in the United States was also, and this is not too well known, was met with the 1954 Communist Control Act, and that curtailed a lot of the party's activities. So there were things going on in Congress that addressed these radical ideas. But the truth is that the proof is in the seeing. And it wasn't until the true colors of the Soviet communism were on display with the brutal 1956 invasion of Hungary that the shine came off communism.
The shine came off communism?
Yeah, when you saw the brutal invasion, then it was not exactly the thing they wanted to keep pushing.
I don't, I think everything we've seen up until the last maybe 10 years has always been dramatically against communism, especially China and Russia, anyway. Gallup conducted a survey recently, and that they claimed that pro-capitalism is on the decline and democratic socialism is on the rise. And Graham, I know you tuned into this survey as well as me, so can you elaborate more on that?
I can actually, and funny enough, just today I came across an even more disturbing poll, and I'll go into that in a minute. But yeah, the Gallup survey basically showed that, and it's not exactly a five-alarm fire. I mean, the survey basically showed that essentially the, if you like, the approval rating for socialism is about the same as it was. It hasn't really moved much, but fewer Americans apparently are pro-capitalist. I hate even using the word capitalism because that word was invented by Karl Marx to kind of make free market economics sound, sound somehow. He had to come up with an ism for it to describe free market economics so that he could make
The negative ism.
the boogeyman, make a negative connotation as soon as something becomes an ism. But anyway, yeah. So the Gallup survey showed that fewer Americans are kind of pro-capitalist or pro-free market, if you like. But there's a Rasmussen survey that's just come out, which I thought was particularly frightening. And this survey, they surveyed basically likely US voters between the ages of 18 and 39. And the survey showed that 59% of them, 59% favor the government or Congress, if you like, passing legislation to limit how much money somebody can earn in a year.
Huh?
So yes. So basically 60% of aged 18 to 39 voters, 60% of them want the government or favor the idea of the government passing a law saying you can only earn up to a certain amount of money every year. Which is very scary, and there's all kinds of connotations for that. But literally, and it was kind of a certain percentage of them said that your income should be capped at $1 million a year. A very small percentage of them, I think, thankfully, it was only about 4%. But they wanted it so that nobody could earn more than $200,000 a year. I don't know what these people think.
I know people that aren't going to like that idea. Hey,
well, of course, this was just a survey about, it's a hypothetical thing, but it is scary when you think.
Yeah, as soon as there's a hypothetical seed planted, you know how that goes.
It's an awful idea. I mean, I can't imagine how it could ever possibly. Well, it's not going. I don't want to say how it could work because it could never work. But I don't know how it could ever possibly be implemented. Thank heaven. But yeah, that was a scary poll. That to me, that was much more scary than the Gallup poll on socialism v capitalism.
Okay, so what if this country, nosedives into a recession or, God forbid, a depression? I mean, not everybody knows how to live off the land or shoot squirrels in their backyard for supper, but even though we know that Jim knows how to do this, Jim, why don't you let us know what we're going to do with all these city people that can't function without help?
Well, I'll say this: if we're feeding folks with squirrels, we're going to have to shoot a lot more squirrels. Before I get into that, though, I really just want to make one little comment on what Graham said. Graham, as I told you this morning when we were talking about that, that survey might be good news, man. 59% of people under 40 being for that means that 41% of America's youth doesn't have their head up their butts, which I think might be an improvement. But anyways.
Okay. We just alienated an entire demographic. Thank you very much.
Anyways, you always hear, to the point that you're asking me about, Sarah, you always hear people talk about the good old days, and some of that's a little bit of misdirected nostalgia. But now in the post-COVID world, we have the good old days that were just a decade ago. I looked at some numbers earlier today, and the average rent is about $2,000 a month now. The average mortgage is over $2,700 a month. Back in 2015, it was $900 and something for rent and $1,100 for mortgage. Car payments are up a few $100s a month. Car insurance is up almost 200%. Meanwhile, the average monthly income is only up about 10%. So I don't care how self-sufficient and self-reliant and live off the land you are. You can raise cows and goats and pigs and rabbits and chickens and a dozen fruits and vegetables. But what are you wearing? What are you driving? Are you paying mortgage or rent? If you aren't, you've still got insurance and stuff. And taxes. Those of us out in the country that kind of do our own thing, we're a little insulated from economic woes, but we're not immune from them. It's going to hit us all eventually.
Yeah, it'll catch up.
Yeah. And sadly, what happens is, what's going to happen? Well, we know the answer. Again, let's look back to that COVID time. More of that free money from the government that we're all going to spend the rest of our lives paying for.
No, your kids are, Jim. All of your kids are going to pay for it. I think our economic problems are Andrew's fault because he knows more about it than I do.
Absolutely.
You know, Andrew,
Blame the
is
Canadians.
America messed up? I mean, do we need government control and enhanced social programs and all of this stuff? Or, can we take a step back?
If I may just quickly piggyback on what James was talking about, when a system is called when the United States is called a free market economic system, and we're told that constantly, and the young people cannot buy a house, they cannot afford a car, they have to live with their parents, they can't even find work. Of course, they're going to rebel against a very system that they cannot benefit from. So, in a way, yes, we all know socialism is stupid, it's horrible, it's bad, it does not work. But when they see a system that's supposed to be capitalist, of course, they're going to attribute the problems to that. Now, to answer your question, Sarah, I think the problem is that for decades, both parties have championed policy creep. Now, this topic has come up a lot over in my time, at least at Liberty Nation News. I've written many articles talking about how young people support socialism or more people view communism favorably. But what I always quote is a great thing by economist Ludwig von Mises, and he wrote in 1950, quote, "The middle of the road policy is not an economic system that can last. It is a method for the realization of socialism by installments." Now, the Republican Party is a great example of this. It's supposed to be a party of capitalism and free markets, but look at it today. The current administration is buying a 10% stake in Intel. That is socialism. That is corporate welfare. Why is the U.S. government getting involved in buying companies? Why is Dave Patterson's company, the Pentagon, buying $400 million of stock in a rare earths mining company? So this is one of the problems that the United States has today. Is that when you, I think, what's his name? Frederick Hayek, he talked about also in The Road to Serfdom. You have this ratchet effect whereby the more the state plans, the more difficult it becomes to either curtail that government intervention, or it becomes harder for the individual to adapt to changing circumstances. And you see this constantly. You saw it during, James mentioned this, you saw it during the pandemic. You had all this free money being given to everybody just for breathing. And now today, people almost expect to have universal basic income, blaming robots, blaming artificial intelligence. So in government encroachment, it keeps expanding. No matter what party is in power, every party champions a little bit of socialism, but they don't name it socialism, but that's what it is. Trumponomics 2.0, no matter with some of the good things that it touts, you have government buying up companies, buying shares in companies, and blaming the previous administration for it. So overall, I think it's the two-party system that's at fault. It's a lack of understanding of economics is the issue. It's the ratchet effect. There are many issues that you could espouse upon for a whole C5 episode, but we don't have that much time. So I'll just leave it there then.
All right, we're gonna close down now.
As I said earlier, blame the Canadian.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Okay, well, the government printing money and handing it out to the non-working class is not and will never be a solution. But how does one convince the participation trophy generation of the satisfaction you get from a job well done? Just remember, kids, socialism is bad. Thanks, panel, for the great info, especially Yap and Andrew, and thanks for tuning in. Well, that's it for our Conservative 5 panel today. Check out our other C5 shows and segments on your favorite video platform. YouTube, Vimeo, Rumble, we're on them all. As well, Liberty Nation News has its own Roku channel where you can see all of our TV productions. Now, Liberty Nation does not endorse candidates, campaigns, or legislation, and this presentation is no endorsement. I'm your host, Sarah Cowgill. Thanks for joining us today for the latest news and commentary, your choice for free thinking, free speech, libertynation.com.